Even a fight between drunks seems sort of charming. At first, the people were put off by the foreigners flowing into Tokyo, but they gradually grew used to it. Except for the times where they pressed in around the employment agency, looking for high wages. Drunks and low-level laborers were quick to get along. Could it be the power of alcohol and body language? It makes you think that words aren't the most important part of international relations. Well, of course, charming scenes like this only occurred in a certain part of the downtown area. If you look at the city as a whole, relationships with foreigners were as strained as ever. Acclamation and resignation produced the friction a bit, but their essential opposition remained unchanged. Reduce the friction. And on top of that, there is the Cold War between Primavera and the GDS after the Soy Sauce War. Yep. Even more important was the mistaken impression that Primavera tried to make a bundle off of soy sauce. Before, people had thought of Madame Rose and Primavera as the saviors of the Japanese countrymen. However, the city folk now thought of them as a simple mafia, whose shroud of fake benevolence had been torn away. Though the city folk had at once sympathized with Madame Rose's noble ideals. Ever since the Soy Sauce War began, businessmen in the Japanese community began to distance themselves from the mafia called Primavera. If the Japanese wanted to protect their culture and the goals, it was essential that they first establish a self-sufficient basis for their lifestyle. They urgently needed to rearrange the frail foundations of their distribution system, which Wang had been able to take over so easily. As has been stated before, when a distribution system scale grows larger and larger, those controlling it have a bigger and bigger advantage when making deals. Madame Rose wanted to make the distribution network of the Japanese community in City 23 firm by uniting it into one. However, in a complete reversal of their attitudes, until a year before, the reactions of the businessmen were unenthusiastic. If the Japanese want to protect their lifestyles after becoming a minority, they must remain united. As merchants, you should know better than anyone else that both money and people become stronger when gathered together in a bunch. I understand what you're saying. I think it sounds reasonable. However, please everyone, we want to hear your frank and candid opinions. Our consigliere Richard has just stated what our ideals are. There is no way to protect the post-war Japanese community except unity. We did manage to stop the recent economic invasion made by Wang, but we won't get another chance like that. The war via soldiers has been concluded, but the war itself hasn't ended at all. Foreign businessmen will probably start by offering you deals on advantageous terms. However, they've swallowed you all and their attitudes will change abruptly. Forgive my rudeness, but I believe some among you have already complied with these strategies of theirs. Well, you did ask us for our candid opinion, so allow me to be frank. Please do. We've never forgotten the tyranny of the Gale Bearer, nor the debt we owe you for releasing us from that. Of course, we don't intend to forget that going forward, but... Thank you very much, but of course we have no intention of demanding anything in return for what we did. No, we understand your heart well, Madame Rose. We understand, but, we're merchants, and you of Primavera or not. We're extremely grateful for your protection, and we're not unwilling to pay you in exchange for it. However, that doesn't mean you can tell us what to do in our business, is what more and more people are thinking. The City 23 Japanese Distribution Center Association that Rose was proposing would be a very large-scale project. After all, if you are trying to tie together all the distribution in the City 23 Japanese community, conditions for deals grow more favorable when the scope of the deal is larger. If they could all join together, they could form a massive business partner that American merchants and occupying forces wouldn't be able to ignore, to say nothing of Chinatown. And by setting up a balance of purchases between America, China, and Japan, they could avoid becoming dependent on any single camp. That's the ideal, of course. If they could succeed in that, they'd be able to prevent a reoccurrence of the soy sauce war. However, bundling everyone together would require an unprecedented revolution. Bundling distribution together would be the same as bundling all merchants together. In the past, several mafias had existed in City 23's underworld. How much blood would it take to had it taken to bundle those together into one Primavera? This new plan would be on par with doing the same thing again. The mild merchants who disliked shedding blood with other people showed their understanding for Rose's ideals. However, there was also a considerable supply of ambitious merchants, looking for a chance to get rich quick in these chaotic times. Look, if you want to get rich quick, you can go to a different fucking city. Get out. You have to pay a permit to be here. And that permit includes being in basically a union. A merchant union is what you want. These merchants thought exactly the same way as mafias. They wanted to make more money than anyone else. They wanted to break away from the pack. They had no desire to go under someone else's umbrella if there was no profit in it for them. The establishment of a distribution association would work almost exactly opposite to their desires. Of course we support your ideal, Madam Rose. There's a lot of people out there who say differently, but you're still the person to guide our Japanese countrymen. Thank you very much. We'll never do anything to betray our expectations. Your expectations. However, the young ones aren't satisfied. Those of us who were doing business since before the war prize local connections above all else. That's why we understand your position, but... You mean ambitious people who started after the war, people looking to get rich quick, have no interest in a community of mutual cooperation between countrymen. That's pretty much it. Of those young people that has been taking the lead of this matter. He's going around telling people that Primavera is trying to swindle us of our money. He's gathering votes for an opposing faction. If he's spreading around a misunderstood version of our true intentions, that certainly is troublesome. President? What's this man's name? His name, pretty sure it was Davis Degawa. Heard something about him starting up business with with diamond he plundered from the battlefield. Kill him. He's one shitty bastard. So he's turned up in a faction opposed to the association? Put him down like a dog he is. Yeah, I remember Davis. It's a joke to call him a young merchant. He's entirely a person from our realm. A tough customer, certainly. Oh, you know him? A while ago, he opened up a gambling spot and started raking it in. He just happened to bump up against my turf. What happened? Well, I did offer to make him my right-hand man through various means. From what we've investigated, he's not the sort of man to wag his tail for anyone. Precisely. So what do you think he did next? No clue. Oh, hey. He went off and sold all of his gambling houses. Sold them to Alfred Akagi. That's crazy. So he sold Crazy Alfred everything, including the fight. Thanks to that, I had quickly turned into a war between Alfred and me. We managed to strike a deal in the end, but one of the places whose interior decorating I had chosen myself was blown to bits with dynamite first. After all, that crazy guy used to be the biggest destructive force in the city. Nothing to be gained by dealing with someone like that. Davis specialized in making the biggest mess of things he could, and taking the money and running away. I'll bet that this time, too, he's planning to fire up an anti-association faction to make trouble and grab all the good stuff for himself. Davis, huh? That bastard. Making a mess of Rose's work. Well, we know who to call in. The states are the leading members of the capitalism camp. There's no problem we can't resolve with the money. So it won't come cheap after all. No helping it. At least they're willing to let bygones be bygones. I remember how much they came crying to me when Primavera started dealing only with Japanese merchants. America, China, and Japan, unless C-23 could maintain balanced dealings between these three camps, it wouldn't be able to maintain its autonomy. However, there was a lot of bad feeling between American merchants and Primavera. Once in the past, Rose made all clubs in Primavera Alliance switch to dealings with the Japanese businessmen in order to support her countrymen. Yeah, that wasn't exactly the best of ideas. I would have still helped dealt with Americans personally, but just to keep those trade routes up. In other words, all of a sudden, many foreign businessmen found that their deals with Primavera had been ended. That dealt a heavy blow to American merchants who had made particularly large deals with Primavera. When Primavera only represented clubs and ladies of the evening, they had a reason to reject foreign merchants, to support their countrymen first policy. But now that they had a grand goal of stabilizing distribution across City 23, their past was coming back to bite them. Though they were able to wipe the slate clean with Butler as an intermediary, those merchants were demanding compensation for their losses and guarantees for the future. It's hard to call this a fair price, but we do understand of their position. Have some understanding of their position. How do you mean it's not a fucking fair price, dude? Really? It's more than fair. You guys completely fucked them out of their initial deals. We acted unjustly in a business sense. There's no helping it. Yeah, unjustly. At the time, it was more important for us to support our countrymen. A new situation calls for a different response. That's all there is to it. No need to worry about it. It's normal for friends and enemies to swap positions. Happens all the time. It's common in the world of adults. No need to get so down, Rose. She's just a bit tired. Just a short while ago, she was in the meeting with some merchants. I'm sorry, Captain. I've been feeling a bit feverish for a while. Poor Rose. You okay? You've been pretty busy getting that association ready, right? She's working too hard. Get a little rest. The captain and I will finish the rest. That's right. Lead the rest to us and get a little rest. I'm sorry. I'll call tonight then, if you don't mind. Rose nodded to them with a full smile. However, her face was a little pale, and you could see that she wasn't in perfect health. Yeah, because she's fucking sick or some shit. At least she's not poisoned. You sure she's not overworking herself? She has a bad habit of involving herself in every matter, simply because she represents our group. She doesn't know how to cut corners. She is dead earnest, after all. Even so, I do try hard to shut out anything she doesn't need to hear. After all, she feels a strong sense of responsibility she would get involved in. If Rose goes down, Primavera's finished, right? I think you'd better work a bit harder to shield her. Oh, other way. Of course. She sets out the policies, and we focus on the practical business. There's more to supporting her than simply standing by her side and offering advice. In the future, I plan to step forward more proactively, taking the lead in Primavera's management. You've changed a lot. When I first met you, I figured you were the type who'd raise objections whenever Rose proposed something, slowing her down. That sort of support isn't suitable for Rose now. Rose is our king, no, our queen. What country would let their king fight personally, or have him till the fields? I guess so. Rose's ideals won't become reality if she guides and the people simply obey her. They only come true if the people understand those ideals and move on their own accord. As a person in charge of supporting the madam, I must take the lead and take action. I merely realized that obvious fact. Butler agreed with Rudyard's view. Rose's ideals were a noble thing, which would show the path for her countrymen. However, ideals exist to show the way, and there was no need for her to stand at the brunt against the oncoming winds. Rose's heart was too beautiful to be worn down by those waves. I agree. Rose couldn't be allowed to fall yet. Even so, she remained standing at the head. However, before long, it may no longer be necessary for her to stand at the head. It would be okay for Rose to entrust her ideals to her reliable allies and rest. That was why the organization called Primavera existed. As Richard eloquently said this, he resumed his meeting with Butler with even more passion. Oi, fuck off. Oh, hey, babe. Captain, sorry to bother you while you're working, but could I borrow my brother for a bit? I don't mind, I was just thinking of asking for a soft drink. Someone make the captain something non-alcoholic. What is it? Is it urgent? With a bright business smile, Stella led Richard into a blind spot in the corridor. Then, after checking that no one was watching them, she spoke with a tense expression. Rose fainted. What? Calm down, no one knows yet. Wayne and I are going to take her to the hospital soon. What's her condition? Is she okay? Is she fatigued? Some sort of illness? Calm down. It's probably fatigue. I think she's just too tired. You and the others have been working Rose too hard lately. You haven't forgotten she's a girl, have you? I have no words. It's my responsibility for not taking notice of her physical condition. Ever since all that trouble with the soy sauce, Rose has been working every day without breaks. What on earth are you making her do? You and the others keep bringing these thorny matters to her, wearing her out. Please show a little concern for her health. Probably does need to take a break. Those days of exhausting work might have been too much for Rose's delicate body. Ever since establishing the Primavera family, she hasn't stood still even for a moment. But it was probably more than that. There was such an extreme change in atmosphere between this year and the previous one. Well, yeah, she's under immense amounts more stress and pressure. At some point, the sacredness of Madame Rose, the woman praised for guiding her countrymen, had been lost. Primavera wasn't a savior for its countrymen, just a greedy mafia. Once that view became common, it was only natural that the winds would start blowing in the opposite direction. No matter what sort of ideals Rose tried to proclaim, they would be greeted with suspicion, and people would assume she was doing it for selfish reasons. Rose had been exposed to too much slander, while trying to solve each and every mistaken assumption. Ladies of the evening learn how to pick up on subtle clues and read what people are thinking. That must have driven the blade of slander deeper. Even now, Rose was suffering in the middle of a nightmare. She was being tormented by the greater responsibility of leading her countrymen and their overly cold criticism. We think that she's saying sounds reasonable, but... Don't get involved. Whispering. We're poor. We aren't super rich like you. Guess this means Madame Rose has been exposed for what she really is, huh? She acted like a saint, but her mind was full of plans to make money, after all, the rumors say. I hear you've been lining your pockets by the amount of you dropped wages. Well, lucky you. Stella. Are you awake? Do you remember? You suddenly fainted. Rose, please rest. The doctor will be here soon. Sorry for fainting all of a sudden. I must have worried you. You were tossing and turning a lot. Poor thing. I see. Dreams are pretty strange, aren't they? You forget them as soon as you wake up. However, Stella knew what Rose had been dreaming. Even as she tossed and turned, she had been frantically trying to convince the people inside her nightmare. Hey, Rose. What is it? Recently, I finally figured something out. The ideal society you're aiming for. You aren't heading towards it by the most direct route, are you? It's been my intention to take the most direct route. I'm sorry I said that in a confusing way. That's not what I meant. As part of taking the most direct route of your ideal society, maybe you've been trying to make something else happen first. At first, when I thought that if you became a leader and guided everyone, we'd all be able to reach the promised land together. But if that happened, then in the future, when you're gone, everyone would take the wrong path and become lost again. You're trying to angle them to understand and know what the path forward is, so that they don't need Rose. In the end, society is about ties between people. In school, all you need to do is listen to what your teacher says, but society doesn't work that way. Unless everyone walks forward together, no ideal can become reality. I think even I misunderstood that at first. I mistakenly thought if I stood alone at the head and to guide them, everything would work out. We've learned a lot over these past few years. The fact that you've ended up here shows what foolish, weak creatures we Japanese are. We're always irresponsible, trying to blend in with the crowd. Anyone who stands out gets knocked down. And yet, we're always waiting for a savior to come. It reminds me of your theory that the Japanese only managed to survive until the 20th century because we've been protected by the sea. We are very weak. I mean, you could just flip that and just say, like, the reason you're weak is because you were blocked by the sea and you haven't had a lot of people trying to fucking take over your shit. And that's why. That's why we thought we Japanese had to grow, to become people suitable for an ideal society, before we could start building one. Why you thought. Yeah. By now, I think this bizarre Tokyo, filled with a mix of Americans and Chinese, might be a good medicine for the Japanese. Of course, it's a powerful drug. Most of the Japanese will probably be kicked out of this Tokyo. But someday there may be some Japanese people who gain the resilience needed to stand on the same level as the foreigners. When that happens, I believe they'll be able to build a society of their countrymen, founded on a spirit of mutual cooperation. That's the future, you see, isn't it? I wonder when that'll happen. I don't know. But I haven't lost hope as much as you think. In the time since the Japanese were exposed to civilization less than a century ago, they've grown so much. I'm sure that once another 100 years have passed, they'll be much more resilient. So you're talking about 2949 by the Western calendar. This is incredibly far in the future. Wonder if humanity will be living in outer space cities by then. Huh, fuck no. What? Man, we got 28 years until then? Oh, fuck no. We ain't getting that far. But can we frail Japanese survive until that dizzyingly distant future? That's what Primavera is for. Man, I don't know if we'll even get back to fucking Mars by then. I'm nothing more than a singular gear in history. It's completely impossible for me to stimulate 100 years of Japanese evolution. Hey, everything's made up of one person in time. However, if we want to protect that century-long incubation period, we need to build a shell. A shell. A durable shell that will protect the weak chicks for a century. And also various forms of power to protect the rights of self-government. That must be passed on to our countrymen 100 years in the future. Influence, wealth, force. Doesn't that practically describe Primavera? That's right. We need to pass on 3 types of power that can protect the growth of our countrymen for 100 years and build an ideal society for them in the future. That's Primavera's, Madame Rose's role. We've reached the hospital. We've spoken with them, so please enter through the back. Just to be doubly sure, a careful examination was made. The result was as expected, overwork. The doctor recommended a break for the near future, but there's no openings in Madame Rose's schedule. Too bad, that's the opening. The negotiations and meetings with big American and Chinese and Japanese merchants who held power in City 23 couldn't wait. The doctor understood the circumstances, but still made a point of being firm with his warnings. If you don't rethink how to handle your work, this will happen again and again, and each time you fall down, your lifespan will shrink. When Wayne heard this, he turned pale and urged her to rest, but Rose was too stubborn to be coaxed into agreeing. I can handle this just fine. Estelle listened to Rose saying this over and over. She hung her head and didn't move. Rose is too good for some of these people. Swear to God. To Estelle, Primavera was supposed to be no more or less than a place that guaranteed good pay to ladies of the evening. When had that changed? When had she started supporting mutual cooperation between countrymen, focusing on something as extravagant as the future of her people, of their people? In this park, which was slightly larger than the other ones in the Japanese colony, a large group of Japanese children were playing. In their midst, her sister's son, Yuji, was playing in a sandbox. Eugene Mayugi. Fuck off. That child who had once been the baby Richard carried around on his back was now a 2-year-old. Not only could he crawl, but he was walking around as he pleased, and could even speak in short sentences. Maybe he was developing a sense of self, as he'd entered his first rebellious stage, insisting that he could do everything himself, and fiercely resisting any help. Earlier, Stella had joined Yuji as he played in the sandbox, but she couldn't keep up with the 2-year-old's endless stamina. She'd slipped away while he was engrossed in playing by himself. She'd wanted to rest on a bench a short ways away, where she could watch over Yuji. A single young man had sat at the end of that bench. Normally, she wouldn't have wanted to sit on a bench with a man, even if he was sitting at the end. But she was tired and couldn't find a convenient bench anywhere else. I'd fucking chat her up, dude. Are you kidding? She's hot as hell.